What up, MAGFest?
Hello.
This is not the panel yet. We're just going to harass you from the stage because you foolishly came into the room.
All right, we're going to play some games because it's a gaming con, right? The first game we're going to play is who has been to the most MAGFests. I don't know my exact number, but I've been to going to MAGFest since it was in a different building. So, has anyone here been to MAGFest in a building other than this one?
Wow.
What? Yeah. Well, I mean, it wasn't even called Super MAGFest then. It was the only MAGFest.
Kind of like how PAX was just PAX, and then they made an East and had to make some name for it.
Yeah. All right, good. I won that game. Great. Next.
More games Rim and Scott will win.
All right, the next game. Who has traveled the furthest to be with us here today? I came from New York City. Who came from further away? Where'd you come from?
Boston.
Further away than Boston.
Ohio.
Further away than Ohio.
Canada.
Where in Canada?
West Coast Canada.
All
Like
right.
Vancouver?
Sunshine
Okay.
Coast.
All right. Further than Vancouver-ish area?
Seattle.
That's a tie. We got a tie. All right. We got a tie. I'll see you in Labor Day, Seattle people.
How many of you, this is your first MAGFest? All
Oh.
right. It's a pretty good MAGFest so far.
Do these first-time MAGFest people, have you been to other cons?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Do you realize that MAGFest is 24/7, right? You're aware that it's not like the other cons, right? You can go play DDR at 4 a.m. and I suggest you do so.
While you're still young.
There's only a few days of your life that you can play 4 a.m. DDR, and these are them. All right. What was our third? Oh, right. Who here has? These are all games designed for us to usually win. If you haven't gathered. Who here has the oldest save game you have to beat? We have NES cartridges from the 80s that would technically have the oldest save games if their batteries didn't die. Does anyone have a save game older than an NES cartridge from the 80s? No.
Best answer we ever got
Oh
was,
yeah. You can get like a PC game from like the 70s, or one time someone said they had a character sheet, like their dad's character sheet from 70s D&D.
Ooh.
Yeah.
All right, whose first computer in your family was older than a 486 SX? Okay, we're really old.
Right.
Our first or my family's?
Oh, your
What
first
was
or
the
your
first
family's
computer
first?
that was in a house that you lived in?
Oh, I don't know the machine's name.
What?
My parents have been in programming since 1930s.
All
All
right.
right.
Which illustrates something very important.
You probably
about MAGFest.
win. We just don't know what computer it was. But you can get the trophy anyway. We'll believe you.
You really got to internalize the fact that video games as a form of art are brand new on this earth and were invented in the lifespan of people alive today. How often does an entirely new medium appear and people start making art in that medium? Like writing was one of those, cinema was one of those, video games is one of those, and it's still in its
Well,
earliest
cinema's not that old
infancy.
either. Cinema's only from the early
Yeah.
20th century.
Cinema took 100+ years to get like really going.
Anyway. All right. Okay. Who knows who we are? Too
Ooh.
many people. Why are you here?
How many of you are here because you saw us earlier at this MAGFest? All right.
Okay. But you didn't know who we were before then. Okay. I don't know why you came back. You could be waiting in a line for a concert, or there's a drag show. I'd be going to that, right?
Well, the drag show is ending
Oh, it's
shortly,
ending?
and it's
Okay.
full.
All right. Well, you missed your chance.
Which means the drag show just needs
your
to be in a
mistake
bigger
has
room.
already been made. Wait till next year. There'll
yeah.
be another MAGFest.
If you enjoy what happens in this room in the next hour, and those of you who didn't raise your hands, like, I don't know what you expect is going to happen in this room. But we've been podcasting since 2005, and we've done like 300 or 400 panels at conventions over the years. We're at all the PAXs, the MAGFest. We say words on the internet for free. So if you enjoy what happens for the next hour, if you grab one of these flyers, or type that word into the internet. Maybe not Google anymore. Google's not working so great. Not like it used to.
Whatever search engine you use on the internet.
Every episode of this stupid podcast since 2005 is just online for free. And I gotta tell you, you shouldn't listen to those old episodes.
If you listen to an old episode of Geek Nights and I say something terrible because I was young and stupid, I agree with you. Screw that guy and everything he had to say. But whatever the new guy says, you can trust what he's saying.
Yeah, for now.
Yeah.
But if you enjoy this, so tomorrow, well, actually on Sunday, Scott and I will be doing another panel, the 39 games you must play.
Do I have to?
I mean, you can skip it.
I guess.
It's It's a clickbaity title panel. Like, we're going to list 39 games, but the whole deal is that
How
it's
much
a
time
list
we
of
got?
games
Oh
that
my
if you,
God.
one, you've probably never heard of them or played them, and two, if you do play them, you're going to learn something you probably didn't know about games. And the next one on Saturday, that's actually not me and Scott. That'll be me and my partner, Emily. She's a technical animator, and we're going to be talking about an art movement we think is emerging that is after postmodernism and is directly facilitated by the existence of video games. We might be crazy. We don't know. We're presenting this for the first time to find out how crazy we are.
Let me see. So I printed these stickers like a little while ago. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There's 11 stickers left. They cost me $1 each. If you promise not to put them anywhere in a way that constitutes vandalism at MAGFest. You can vandalize somewhere outside of MAGFest. That won't bother me.
Yeah, if you put it on like a Cybertruck
But if
somewhere else, great.
these stickers are stuck on something at MAGFest, I will come and make sure that you never go to MAGFest again in your whole life, at minimum. But as long as you use the stickers appropriately, you can come and get one afterwards. They cost me $1. You're getting a whole $1 free, basically. Yeah. If for some reason you like our logo and want to look at it more often and be reminded of us, I don't know what, but
It's late. We still got 5 more minutes. This isn't the panel. We're going to act like none of this happened. You're going to see a weird transformation at exactly 9 o'clock.
All right, well, the pre-panel games used to take longer than 5 minutes.
Yeah. What's the best game someone played in the arcade today?
Plug and chug.
What was that?
Punch-Out?
Plug and chug?
Oh, Plug and Chug.
Plug and Chug, okay.
I made 1 drink before I lost in that game. I love that it has an instruction book and it's kind of expected that you'll read it while you're playing. I'm pretty impressed with Nightmare Cart. That thing's looking pretty good.
I'd have to look at my photos to remember which ones, because I basically sat there and I played like all of them, like
Yep.
in a, you know.
But it's cool, like MAGFest, that is, like other cons have arcades, but MAGFest has that MIVS area. Because you'll notice there's like consoles, artist alley, a weird area, and then an arcade.
Well,
Because
there's
that,
indie arcade and MIVS are two different things, right?
yeah, the weird area is broken in two, and one side of it is like indie stuff, and the other side of it is basically like gaming-ish art installations. And I cannot stress enough that that is not a thing that's at other conventions. And if you have not gone to the MIVS area, it is the
The
best
MIVS
thing
area
at
is where the
MAGFest.
actual indie like developers have like booths. The back part where the installations are is like indie arcade. It's not MIVS.
You know, there's a big hat. Like, what's up with that? There's a CRT hanging from like a bunch of chains, and it says weird things to you if you walk up to it.
I really like the little like retro thing they have where they have like people made new games, but they're like made them for NESs and Genesises and SNESs, and they have all those CRTs in like in a rectangle, and you can go around playing all of those. It like kind of makes me want to try to make a game like that, but it's much easier said than done.
I think there's more CRTs owned by people who go to MAGFest than in much of the rest of the world.
And the other thing is like, you know, for all the amazingness of like a 4K HDR TV, right? You can't make it glow the way a CRT glows, and it makes me want to get one of those little, you know, studio, you know, Trinitron monitor special display ones, right?
I mean,
but they cost a lot of money.
My TV, which was huge for its time in the 80s, was a 1974 color RCA with wood paneling, and it was about this big.
We shouldn't have gotten rid of the TV we bought at the Circuit City.
No,
if
we
had
absolutely
that, If we
shouldn't
had
have.
that now, people would be going crazy for it.
Yeah.
Right?
But the
We
1974.
just put it outside, even though it was working perfectly.
Yep. The thing is, it rained on that 1974 color RCA.
Not
a few
that one,
times.
the silver one.
No,
We just
but the 1974 color RCA still worked
It
despite
did-
being rained on.
It did work when we put it, but the
Also, fun fact, CRTs are very dangerous and can implode and then explode. Still got 2 more minutes.
Well, we can just do nothing for 2 minutes. I don't know why we didn't have this panel in the tabletop panel room.
This was a last minute edition because something canceled.
All right.
And it feels like a good late night panel. You can say the F
We
word a
didn't do
little bit.
anything in the tabletop panel room this year.
No, we
though.
didn't.
Yeah.
Because that was scheduled by different people, and the Mages was different people, and
Oh,
talking shop up on stage.
The people don't realize MAGFest, the way other conventions are sort of centrally organized, more so, right? MAGFest is very much like almost like a states' rights kind of situation. Like each area of MAGFest is individually governed. It's like the panels people run the panels, and they don't really know and the arcade people run the arcade, and all these different organizations basically are running the different parts of MAGFest mostly independently. So it's like if you want to do things at MAGFest, you have to figure out the right department, and you have to get that department to want you to do your thing. Yeah.
Also, if you really like things like MAGFest, one, they're always looking for staff. They always need help. Like, if you want to volunteer, they will give you an avenue.
If you want to
do that.
not pay $100 in change to come to MAGFest and instead be like me and pay $0, you can either work for MAGFest or just do like a panel or something.
Get good at talking. I haven't paid for a
You don't have to get
MAGFest
good
or
at
a PAX
talking.
since like 2002.
You can just stand up here and be bad at talking, and you'll still get the free badge. And if you do it, it means one less time I have to do it.
And if you get in even once, you can put it on your little resume, and then you go to another convention and say, oh yeah, I have a speaking history. That's how we got into the Penny Arcade Expo.
Yeah, I gave these panels at MAGFest. You should let me do panels at your con too, so I don't have to buy a badge there either.
Because I promise you, normal people, if you say, oh, I gave a talk at a conference, they're not imagining this.
This is not what they're thinking at all.
All right, we got about 20 seconds. Oh, that big band concert was pretty good, though.
All right, we're good.
I'm Rim.
I'm Scott.
We are the hosts of Geek Nights. It is a podcast. If you enjoy anything that happens in this room over the next hour, I highly encourage you to look for that word, because there is lots of examples of us saying things on the internet you can just watch. But also, if you don't enjoy what happened, Google that word anyway, remember it, go to the staff, and tell them to not keep bringing us back.
Are we allowed to say bad words at MAGFest?
I mean, take your freaking turn.
Sure.
I think I flagged this panel as bad language. I flagged the meta context one as bad language.
Okay. Well, I'm sure everyone knows what word goes there.
Yep. We are here because that is a problem.
All right. Obviously, we're talking about games where you have to take turns, and that's a game where you got to take some freaking turns. A lot of them. And each
Yep.
of those turns is a long turn. Really long.
Yep. And I imagine, how many of you raise your hand if you're here because you're hoping to make the games you play go faster? Okay. All right. How many of you, your friend made you come to this panel and they didn't tell you why, like someone handing someone a bar of soap? Well, got some good news for you, because we've been there too. Long ago, I was trapped in games of Everdell that took 4 hours. I was stuck in games of Settlers that would never end. Everyone's experienced Monopoly. We've all been there. But Scott and I have escaped. This doesn't happen to us anymore. And you too can avoid the Marge situation, because I picked this image for a reason. We're going to see this image a lot in the panel. Because note, Marge is having a good time, and nobody else is. That is what's happening at the tabletop table, because if nobody's having a good time, the game gets put away unless you're all really stupid.
Right, one time we played Diplomacy, a long game. We played it for several hours, but we were all chill people, and we said, we have reached a point of no longer fun for anybody. Let us cease this this nonsense. And we did. We stopped playing immediately.
5 hours later, it was a 5-way draw, and I'm never playing that game again.
Right, but if you got that one person who's having a good time, if Marge is there, it's going to be really hard to get everyone to agree to stop playing.
So the real point of this is that if you're not enjoying something, you shouldn't be doing it unless you have a very good reason to be doing it. And there's rarely a good reason to keep playing a long, slow board game you hate with someone you don't even like that much.
Yep, so forget about all the rest of the advice. The most important thing you need to know, right, in this panel is that you can quit. We actually did a separate panel about quitting, but like, you're allowed to quit playing a game at any time. It's not life. You can't quit life, but you can just quit a game whenever. If you can't quit, it's not a game.
Yep.
Right? So if you're not doing good, just get the hell out.
But I do have to give you a warning, and this is honestly a serious warning. If you do internalize the things we're about to say, and you take this advice, we have a reputation among our friends of getting antsy if someone takes more than 2 or 3 seconds to take their turn in a game like 1846, The Race for the Midwest. Like, we go fast, we get antsy, we get irritated, we'll quit games. We play Settlers, that's like a 45-minute game tops.
Less than that.
Yeah. Including the teach.
I guess.
Yep. We play games fast, but as a result, it's very hard for us to find people who are willing to do this with us. You're going to have the same problem that someone who gets good at Street Fighter, but their friends don't get good at Street Fighter has. No one will play Street Fighter with you ever again.
Or you won't want to play with them, right? Even you find people who have this, where they want to do the same activity, but they can't do it with each other because they are not in a spiritual alignment, right? So if you are the kind of people like us, or if you become more like us, you'll be able to play games with people like us, but maybe not all the people you actually live near.
It's also going to ruin a bunch of games for you, but we'll get to that. So first we got to talk about the perception of time. The older people are laughing at this. This is ancient internet nonsense. So what we're really talking about here, if a game is taking a long time, we can analyze what are we doing with that time. The concepts we're about to talk about here will be very useful in the rest of this talk. When you're playing a game, there are 4 kinds of things you can be doing with your time: analysis, busy work, decision making, and waiting. Analysis. What's going on? What could I do? Has he got longest road or largest army or whatever? Like, you're looking at the game, you're thinking about the game. We play games because we want to do that. That's enjoyable. That's not necessarily wasted time.
Right. This is part of the fun of playing a game, is looking at the game and saying, what should I do next, right? What's going on here? Who's stronger? Who's weaker? Right? What moves are available to me? Is there something I just realized that's a possibility, right? This is fun stuff. We like doing this.
Now, busy work, these are the rituals to make a tabletop game happen. Shuffling the cards, pushing the mahjong tiles around, doing whatever the hell you do in the third phase of Power Grid that I always forget and have to look up. All that stuff. And those are a necessary part of games, but I'd argue many times this is also not necessarily a bad thing. You like the sound of shuffled cards. You like that click-clack of the mahjong tiles. You're playing a tabletop game partly because you want that tactility. You want that feeling. You're engaging with the game in the real world.
Yep. It's worth noting that all the other things we're going to, this is mostly a tabletop panel we did for a tabletop con, but for video games, as long as they're turn-based video games, all of these things still apply except the busy work, because almost always a video game will just eliminate all busy work and do it for you.
Yep.
Which is nice.
Except
sometimes.
Well, 1846, The Race for the Midwest, is a great example because it's a game that takes about 4 hours to play in real life because you have to calculate all these dividends for all these stock certificates. If you play it in a video form, the game just does that and just does everything. It takes about 2 seconds. You can play a whole game in like 20 minutes.
Depending
on which train game.
Right.
Decision making. I didn't say execution because this is broader than that. This isn't just taking your turn. This is preparing to take your turn. Making actual decisions. Scott plays a card. I play the counter card. He plays the counter card. Engaging with the game mechanically to make decisions. The core of all tabletop games.
Right.
The most fun part.
Right. This seems like it might overlap with analysis because they're both basically thinking activities, but thinking of what's going on here and thinking of, I have decided to do this. There's actually a decision I must make, and I must choose one of the paths, right? Door 1, 2, or 3 is a different category of thinking.
Now, just because a game takes a long time, it might not necessarily be bad that particular game takes a long time because you might be spending your time in the right amount of busy work, analysis, and decision making. But then there's waiting. When you play an entire game of Marvel Snap while you're waiting for someone to take their turn. When
Not
you
anymore.
wander away from the table.
Right. So waiting is basically always bad. Nobody likes waiting. There's no fun in waiting. When you are waiting, you are not playing the game, right? And people like to win. They like losing less. But the thing that game players like least is not playing, right? When you play a game, you just want to play. As long as you can still play, even if you get, demolished and in last place, that's a much better experience than not playing at all.
Think about the reaction people have to control decks in any game.
Right.
So that, again, is the valley of despair. We're going to try to avoid that. It is possible to play games and never wait.
Sometimes.
Never wait effectively. There's going to be nanoseconds of waiting because our brains are only so fast. But a concept you really got to internalize, and this is life advice. You should think about the economy of fun of the activities you spend your time on.
Clearly, everyone has gotten the fun economy wrong because they're still in this room with this MAGFest right outside the other wall.
There's like a concert going on. There's a whole arcade.
Yeah, you guys have really messed this one up.
But as this Adobe stock image is showing us, the amount of fun you have divided by the time it takes to unlock that fun is your fun economy. It's a real simple equation, and it has deep ramifications. Well, look at some game examples. Deep Sea Adventure, real simple game. You're a bunch of rich jerks on a submarine, I guess a crappy submarine, topical, and you're all gonna drown. because you share the same oxygen supply and you all hate each other and you're trying to get treasure for yourself. Really quick, simple game. It is objectively 1 unit of fun.
Yeah, this is a fun game. I enjoy playing this game. But if I was really going to spend a lot of time on this game, I'd be like, why am I spending an hour on this nothing little tiny game? But the game takes like almost no time to play. It is the fastest game, right? We did a panel at PAX Unplugged. We taught people how to play, and then people played the whole game, and there was time left in the panel, and people were leaving, right? Because it was such a quick game to play.
Yep.
Even if you play with the maximum number of players, it comes in a tiny little box, which is about the amount of time it takes, a tiny little bit of fun. And so it's okay to spend a tiny amount of time on a tiny bit of fun. That's a good value.
Like eating a tiny cookie that's really good.
Yeah, 1 cookie, $1, good value. 1 cookie, $100, bad value. Right, there you go.
So what about 1846, the race for the Midwest?
This game is crazy fun if you're someone like us, I guess.
Yeah. Does anyone here play these games? Are we the only people? Okay.
Okay, the people I play the games with raise their hands. Okay.
But this game is objectively more fun. Now, objectively more fun in the sense
That I'm right.
in that we're using fun to be an abstract sense. It is the part of the game you enjoy and are engaging with. There is more to engage with in 1846 Race for the Midwest than there is in Deep Sea Adventure. There is more to engage with in this tiny corner of the board than all of Deep Sea Adventure.
Yeah, I guess if you think about fun not as some opinion of what someone's personal taste is, but more as like objective nutritional content of a game, right? This game is far more nourishing, right, as a meal of game for your brain than Deep Sea Adventure is.
I want to add that to the panel, make like a nutritional warning
Sure,
label.
there's a lot more calories going on here, but this game takes quite a while longer to play than Deep Sea Adventure does, but the time is not so long as everyone plays quickly and is good at it, that it will become obtrusive and you feel like it was too long.
But it is still okay for a game to take a long time because you're doing more. There's more to do. There's more to engage with. So you just have to think about that economy.
Yeah, it's like I spent $100, but I didn't get 1 cookie. I got a whole case of cookies. It was okay.
And then I gotta sit there and eat them all over the next 4 hours.
I'll share them with the people at MAGFest.
And then there's Monopoly. The worst case scenario.
Monopoly isn't a bad game if it took like 5 minutes.
There's this little bit of fun. Think about like McDonald's is bad for you, but you ever walk by a McDonald's and you smell it and this lizard part of your brain is just like, I want to eat that. And you don't want to eat it, but part of your body wants to eat it.
Since like last millennium,
Yeah.
right? But even so, it's like if you start up a game of Monopoly, like there is some fun there, even if you're a big-brained, advanced hoity-toity board game player, right? It's like if you start playing Monopoly, it's like all right. Oh, I okay.
Yep.
Yeah, Monopoly again. I remember now. Okay, we're good. Put it away, right? So, but it takes so freaking long. If it just didn't take so long, it would be fine. But it takes way longer than it has any right to.
Yep, and fun fact, Monopoly was not designed to be a fun game. Monopoly is based on a game called the Landlord's Game. It was designed to show that people starting from the same position in an unregulated capitalist society will get screwed.
We all know this.
People don't know this, I found.
MAGFest people have to know that.
What if a game like Wizard? Or Hearts, or Euchre, trick-taking games, these sort of mahjong, these sort of social games you sit around a table. Sometimes, the game's moderately fun. There's a decent game to engage with. It takes the amount of time it takes, mostly because of the busy work, the shuffling, the bidding, the rituals of card games. But you're playing a trick-taking game, mostly to talk to other trick-taking people, to complain about your hand, and you don't have any bowers, you don't have any trump, you don't have any, you can't win the game, and you might as well just give up. You socialize, and the game is providing the context. So those 3 units of time you spend are an excuse to spend 3 units of time with your friends while you play the game.
Right, if you were just playing Wizard and only getting the fun of the game of Wizard and everyone was just playing it super seriously, like at a tournament, it's like, I guess it could be fun, it's borderline, right? But you get double your money's worth, double your time's worth, because you're also hanging out with a bunch of people. The game has room to incorporate socializing and community building and all those other fun things. And so as long as you're playing it with the right people in the right way, your time was not well wasted.
And this is the value of busy work. Busy work facilitates socialization during games. That's why it's there. Even if the people who designed the games didn't realize it, that is an intrinsic part of those games. Then you have the gems. the games like Root that are a lot of fun. There's a lot to engage with, but they don't actually take that much time. Root is shockingly short for how complex and deep and fun it is.
Yeah, compared to other war game, right? Root, people don't think of Root as like a super serious, nasty war game just because of the way the art looks. But really, it's not any different than those like scary war games like this. Root is the same kind of game as this. It's just designed more in a streamlined fashion, so it takes way less time.
Yep. But the magic of a game like Root is that they have condensed the mechanics to make the game always be fun, be moving quickly as much as possible, give players things to engage with, and end when the game's over. Games that do this are very, very rare. It is shockingly difficult to make a complex game that is fun and quick.
All right, before I forget, because you removed the slide that mentions this, right?
I feel like I should put it back in. You've done this twice in a row.
Right, well, I forgot to do it last time. But, you know, for as fast and streamlined as Root is, it is still a game where you are taking turns one at a time. And when one person takes their turn, they actually have quite a bit of stuff to do on their turn. Not as much as old Grognard War Game, where one person's turn takes an hour.
Especially if you use the expanded rules.
But when you're playing Root with 4 people, right, one person is playing Root and the other 3 people are waiting. And we don't like waiting, right? Waiting makes the game feel longer. If you have a game, it could take just as long as Root if you buy the stopwatch. But if there's no waiting, because maybe everyone is taking turns simultaneously, everyone's always playing all the time, there is no waiting, it could feel shorter than it actually is. Or you could have a game like Ticket to Ride. Everyone play Ticket to Ride? What do you do in Ticket to Ride? All you do on your turn is you either play a card or you draw. You only have a very tiny turn, right? So it goes around the board like whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Everyone's just doing a little bit at a time. So you're waiting, but you're waiting for like 3 seconds before your turn comes around again, because it's like bam, 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 bam. It doesn't feel as long as it is because there's less waiting and less big globs of waiting, right? And so old Grognard War Game here, right? Not only does it actually take an extremely long amount of time.
We're talking months to play this game.
Right, but also when it's the other person's turn, they are basically engaging on this whole freaking thing that takes like 10. Everyone else, if it's more, this game is going to be 2 players, but if it's a war game with more than 2 people, you're going to make 3, 4, 5 people wait for one person's turn. It makes it feel like there's twice as many snails as there actually are.
So now we're getting into some mechanics. We're going to talk about some game design. Why do games take so long? Because there are literally only 2 things that can cause this. We can either blame the player or we can blame the game. One of these 2 things. Also, I don't think anyone in this room knows what either of those things is.
They probably do.
Michael Douglas is The Game. Has anyone seen Michael Douglas in The Game?
Yeah, see?
Like 6 people.
I haven't seen it, but I know about it.
It's actually a pretty good movie.
Okay.
I actually would recommend it.
All right.
Anyway, let's talk about Monopoly. The game is at fault. Monopoly causes itself to go long in a way that the players, no matter what they do, cannot shorten it.
Right. The problem with Monopoly is actually the game ending condition, right? The game ending condition in Monopoly is when everyone except one person goes bankrupt. That is what it takes, according to the rules, for the game to officially end. The problem is that you've reached a point after everyone's bought all the properties and everyone's made all the trades they're willing to make where you know who's won. Someone over there has like a whole lineup of hotels, and now you're just waiting for someone to land on those. And that takes a while until they actually go bankrupt. And that's just garbage time you're wasting. You could have declared the game ended earlier and the result would be the same. And so this is a fault in a lot of games into where the victory condition, right, is not in alignment with the game ending condition. The game, you know what the result is already. The game, a well-designed game will end as soon as you know what the result is and not waste your time with doing whatever, right? Monopoly wastes your time because the game ending condition happens way after and it takes you another hour to find out what you already knew. And then on top of that, some people don't play according to the real rules.
That's why I got a little bit of blame for the players here.
Right. Some people don't play according to the real rules. They put money on the free parking. You know how they do that? Not according to the rules. And you know what? That makes the game longer because if people get a pile of money from free parking, it takes longer to go bankrupt. You want people to have less money to make Monopoly go faster.
So thus, we're going to introduce a concept. This is a word from Richard Garfield's Characteristics of Games. It's a word that you can use when you talk about games. Also, this book, Characteristics of Games, I highly recommend it. If you read this book, 80% of anything we've ever said in a talk is just from this book.
All we're doing is reading this book out loud to you, basically, and adding a little of our own flavor.
But bushiness is a concept, and I like the way this book does definitions, because nerds like to argue about definitions. What's a game? So
I'll just make up a new word. That way, haha, you nerds, you don't have already a definition of pre-baked in your mind for this word. So I'm just going to make up a word and tell you what it means. Now you can't argue semantics. You have to engage with my idea instead.
But even better, his definitions will be descriptive rather than prescriptive. They don't define the term in detail so much as they describe the concept. An example of this would be game mechanic. Is worker placement a game mechanic? You probably think, yeah, worker placement, that's a game mechanic. Great, now we have an example of a game mechanic. We don't need a deep definition of what a game mechanic is. We can say things like worker placement or taking your turn. Describing things is easier than prescribing things. It's a good way to engage with academia. But a game has a game tree. All the different decisions players can make in the course of the game. The game tree is sparse if the players have relatively few remaining choices to make. And the game is bushy if there are relatively many. I have some charts. We can step through this. A classic tabletop war game like chess looks like this.
Right, at the start of the game, you got a lot of pieces. How many opening moves are there? Well, there's one opening move for each pawn. The rooks, I guess, can't move right away. But the knights can move 2 different ways each, right? Bishops, they're stuck. I guess, but there's quite a lot of moves at the beginning when you got a lot of pieces.
Yep.
At the end of the chess game, when you got like 3 pieces left, because you're terrible like me and you're gonna lose anyway, right? How many moves do you have? Maybe 2, and only one of them makes any sense because the other ones all just checkmate yourself. Right?
This is why the end games to chess are all deeply solved, but chess is not solved. We can solve the beginning in that we have a defined set of very good openings. We can solve the end because there aren't that many pieces left, and there might not be enough atoms in the universe to solve the middle perfectly mathematically. Different game, American football, as an example. It is roughly the same amount of bushiness the entire game. The rules of football don't change in the second period when the extra power plants come out.
Yep. Every time you're running a play, it's like, well, you've got pretty much, if it's first down and second down, you've got like the same set of plays to choose from. Third down, okay, you got maybe a little different. Fourth down, obviously, now you got some ways less choices because it's fourth down, but in some ways more choices because like, well, you could go for it, right? But towards the end of the game,
look at that little bit there.
At the end of the game, somebody is going to be losing. And when you get into a situation where you're losing and there's not a lot of time left, suddenly you have to take bigger risks, right, to catch up. Like in hockey, you might pull the goalie. In football, suddenly things like the onside kick might start to make sense, right? Or throwing the Hail Mary, which you would never do at the start of the game, now start to make sense. And now there's more things to choose from at the end of the game if the losing team has the ball at least.
Yep, which leads to a very important concept. This is what happens in Monopoly. You start the game, there are decisions to make. You're doing auctions, like you are playing a game and making decisions. And the game will hit a point where there are no more decisions to make. Nobody's gonna trade with you, nobody's gonna sell you anything, and you're rolling dice to find out who wins. And you are now trapped with Marge in the Valley of Despair. But it's worse than that. Let's look at the classic game arc. This is most games. Almost any tabletop game, almost any game you play that is a competitive game is going to have a bushiness arc about like this. The game starts out fairly simple. It sort of hits this crisis inflection point in the middle. The game gets decided mostly around there. And then it has a denouement where maybe you're figuring out what purple buildings to buy to get the extra victory points at the end, or like whatever happens at the end of the game.
Yeah, at the beginning of a tabletop game, most Euro games, things like that, any kind of tableau builder, engine builder, anything of that sort, right? You start with less stuff and you figure out, what am I going to do with this stuff? Maybe you're playing a deck builder and you start with a little tiny Dominion deck of like 10 cards and you build it up and you build it up, and now suddenly there's more choices on your turn because you have more cards that you've acquired and you have a bigger machine to work. But then once you get later in the game, it's like, forget any of that.
Duchy panic time. You're buying duchies every
How
round.
do I get victory points? And it's the only thing that matters is how do I get victory points, and that's it.
So here is the fundamental problem with Marge. Players will perceive the bushiness of a game differently because there is an objective, true bushiness. All the decisions you could make, but humans are good at this naturally. It's kind of how we live in the world. but people who play games get particularly good at this. You naturally know not to do extremely stupid things when you play most games, especially if you're familiar with them.
Right, consider me right now. What could I do right now? I could do all sorts of crazy things.
I can kick
right
the table
now.
over. I can start singing.
There's so many things that I could do right now that are completely wild and out of control, but I'm not going to do any of them.
Oh, Danny boy.
Right. I'm only going to run this panel for the next whatever many minutes because I want to keep my free badge to MAGFest and not have to go home early.
So in the case of football, yes, you can do the onside kick early in the game when you're winning for no reason. You can pull the goalie at the start of a hockey game if you want to. That is an option. Nobody does it for a reason.
And you don't even need to think about it.
But if someone does not engage with the game enough to understand that, they might think, I'm going to put my goalie in the first period. Then I'll get an extra goal and I'll be ahead. It'll be great. And this is thus how Marge will trap the rest of you in a game. The problem is not that you're all stupid or that Marge is stupid. We're not going down that road. The problem is that there is a mismatch in the understanding of the game. When you realize what's really going on in the game and your friends don't, they will be agonizing over decisions that you know are meaningless. And that is where the frustration comes from.
That is how the bushiness connects to the game is going slow. When the game is bushy and there's a lot of possible options to choose from, naturally analysis part of the game will take longer. Naturally the decision-making part of the game will take longer because you have to consider more possibilities. But if you're wasting time considering possibilities that are nonsense, that are obviously bad ideas, skilled players recognize those are obviously bad ideas. They don't waste time thinking about them, and they only think about, these are the only three options that make sense. I'm gonna think about each one of those and pick one of the three. The bad player, or not, the weaker player, right, who doesn't understand this is looking at all 10 possibilities, even though 7 of them are completely pointless, and wasting time thinking about each one and calculating, is this one gonna be a good idea? And then maybe they'll even pick one of those, I don't know.
But it can be fun to be a fool. When we got into German or tabletop, like proper tabletop games, we started playing Settlers of Catan, and we were into it. We played it a lot. We were all up there on that chart and trading wood around, having a great time. You would not enjoy playing Settlers with us today, because if you're a pro at Settlers, you're not trading, you're not talking, nothing fun is happening. The game is decided by the dice.
Okay.
So really internalize this concept. This will help you engage with games way beyond the context of this panel in general. And again, Characteristics of Games. I cannot recommend that book enough.
Okay.
So I make fun of Everdell a lot. Everdell's a good game. Like, I like Everdell. But I've found many times when I've wanted to play Everdell with people, the game takes hours when it shouldn't. I have played games of Everdell that are 45 minutes long, start to finish. And I have sat in games of Everdell that have literally taken more than 3 hours. And this is a situation where we can blame the players and the game in that Everdell is almost a trap. If the players engage with the game and really understand what's going on and recognize what decisions matter and what decisions don't, and have read the cards in advance and know how the game works, the game is very fast. If they have not done this, the game could be fast if they're willing to accept the fact that they don't understand what's going on and just take their freaking turn. But if the players read every card and agonize over every decision, the game will get longer and longer and longer, because Everdell is a game where the bushiness starts small and increases as the game goes on. It's like a multiplicative explosion of possibilities. And as a result, the game will often take a very long time. Sometimes the game will take a long time just because you got to roll 2d6 100 times to figure out the answer.
Right, BattleTech could take a long time because it is turn-based. You have to wait when it's the other player's turn. It's not a game where it's like, you move one mech, I move one mech. It's you move all your mechs, then I move all my mechs, right? And that makes the waiting feel longer, even if the total waiting takes a while. Then you got the busy work of filling in the bubbles and rolling the dice. But the busy work isn't, I kind of like the busy work of BattleTech. If you don't like filling in bubbles and rolling dice, don't play this game, right? That's part of the enjoyment that is there, but it is time consuming, and that's why you often bring in computers to aid you and assist you.
Yep. Though I do have this urge to play BattleTech. It's been a while. So what about American football? American football is an interesting game. It takes as long as it takes because the clock is part of the game. The clock is a resource, just like wood is a resource in Settlers.
Now you could make it take, more real time by using all your timeouts, or keep going out of bounds, or you can make it take less time, take a knee and try to run out the clock strategically. But if you look on television, they take usually about the same amount of time unless there's OT, right?
But there's nothing the players can do to make football take longer. Now we've got a really interesting concept. Munchkin is a political game. Now, not political like the travesty of the American election and the danger we're all in. Political like the game theory term. I have another chart here. When you add randomness to a game, it reduces the return on skill from players in that game. Meaning, think about poker. You could be the perfect robot of poker. If you draw a 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, like that's what you got. There's nothing you can do about it. So the randomness can determine the game. In any game that is not a race and has more than 2 players, and the players can interact in any way, the game will be political to some degree, because once randomness and the fact that the return on skill starts to drop off hits this point, the players are effectively going to vote who wins by interacting with each other. A 3-way war game. I attacked Scott on my turn, and then Joey Jojo Shabadoo attacks Scott on his turn. Scott's just losing now. Nothing he can do about that because we decided to attack him arbitrarily as a person.
Yeah, I could be the best at that game, but if they're ganging up on me, it's like, well, I can't overcome 2 players worth of resources no matter how good I am. That's just what's going to be.
Now, politics games can be really fun. Root is an extremely political game. You're often going to vote on who wins the game effectively, the way Root goes down. But you signed up for that. That's what you're playing. You're playing a war game. You're betraying people. Like, that's the fun of the game. Politics in games as a game theory concept is not bad, but it is bad in Munchkin. Because the way Munchkin works, if you've never played Munchkin, is you do nothing.
If you never played Munchkin, keep it that way.
Yeah. You just sit there and do nothing. You play random nonsense until someone's about to win. And then the next player, their options are let that person win or stop them. And then someone else is about to win. And the next player's options are let that person win or stop them. This is a pattern you have probably seen in a lot of games. This is usually a sign of bad game design, or it's a sign that you have transcended the design of that game. So my advice to you, if you encounter this situation, is to understand the assignment. Munchkin's funny. The cards are hilarious. Like, the game's kind of a joke. If you're in a game like this and you realize this is what's happening, your mission is not to win the game. Your mission is to make the game end.
If you could find a way to if you're playing Monopoly, it's like if you could just make the game end in a way according to the rules, rather than just everyone agreeing to stop playing, right? You would do it. Munchkin, same deal, right? You can save time and make the game go faster by, my choices are to let them win or stop them. I let them win. Game over. Bye.
So a total aside, if you ever play the Star Trek VHS game, which is objectively bad, I have a case I want to make in a different talk that it is so objectively bad, it is actually good, and it teaches real Starfleet principles in a direct material and mechanical way. That sounds crazy, and I refuse to discuss it further. However, this game essentially is a game where you're playing and engaging with all these fucking mechanics, and like they don't make sense. And once you realize that they don't matter, then all you have to do is roll the dice as fast as possible, and the game will just end. So realizing that is the journey you take through this game. So some games, this is the worst, because like games like this, Asteroid Tycoons 2038, Space Train game, this game, I want to like this game. I really want to like this game. This game cannot go faster because you cannot plan ahead on your turn.
Basically, the other players, right? They go around the board and they're flying their little space trains, picking up resources. And you normally in other train games, you can look at the board and say, my train's going to go here and here and here. And then when it's actually your turn, you say, yep, that's where my trains went. Da-ding, and you take your money. In this game, someone has to run their train and pick up the resources. So you don't know where your train's going to go until you see when it's actually your turn has begun, which resources are still available. And so running the trains in this game is this extremely laborious process of each person running a train one at a time, and each choice of do I turn? Does my train still have fuel? Which, right, is so time consuming. There's nothing, no genius, right, could play this game any faster.
I mean, we're pros. We were at a Penny Arcade Expo. We had 3.5 hours set to play this game. Everyone had read the rules. We all knew. We jumped in. We're ready to go. We had to give up because we were getting kicked out because PAX shut down. This happens for two reasons. Either the game state changes so radically between players' turns that investigating the game state before your turn is meaningless, or the game hides information from you until it is your turn, unless you cannot access it. If you're stuck playing a game like this, my advice is to leave the table every time it's not your turn and come back like a fresh babe unto the world every time you're about to figure out how to fuel your space train. Y'all have that friend. You all have that friend who is agonizing over something that literally does not matter. They are trying to optimize the micro victory points in a game where they're already in third place. They are doing math. They might even pull out their phone and be like typing into their calculator. Don't let people use pen and paper at your table. It'll make it even worse. I mostly blame the players when this happens. And I say this because one, and Scott said this the last time we did the talk, are you really that good at the game? Like if you do that and you win, but other people don't do that, are you as good at that game as you thought you were? And two, you're kind of being rude to the other players at the table unless they're also willing to spend that amount of time on their turn.
The other thing is that, and if you're not playing in like a tournament that has a prize or trophy or a glory or some sort of reason to try to win a game, nobody is going to remember who won that game. Right?
And if you have a friend who does,
right? All the sore winners and all the sore losers out there for all your little nighttime, MAGFest games, whatever. Nobody's going to remember. Do you remember the board game you played yesterday? Who won? Are you going to remember it next week? No, it doesn't matter, right? So it's not worth the effort. It's just not.
Yep. But at the same time, as Scott said, if you're in a tournament, by all means, if there's no rule on the clock.
Oh, if there's money, if there's a cash prize, do everything you can do, including cheat. As long as you ain't cheating, you ain't trying, all right?
We have another talk called Play Dirty to Win. It's on YouTube, you can just find it. Yeah, I think you all might like that talk quite a bit.
Yeah.
But the games are a little bit at fault too. If a game is that calculable, where you can look at the board and like figure out how many victory points someone will have that early in the game should make it easy for the players to do that calculation and see the result. Because if it's obfuscated, the game is now also basically just a math test. And math is usually not the fun part of a game. So then you got the games like Settlers or Dune with unbounded bargaining. You can trade stuff for stuff.
Right. You see a lot of games have trading because people love trading, right? Settlers, the fun thing about Settlers, the thing people know most about it is, I'll trade your sheep for wood, right? It's fun to trade stuff with people. People love to trade things even outside of games. It's awesome, right? But most games, especially good ones, will have rules about trading. Like you can only trade at this time. You can only make deals that you can actually fulfill immediately. No like future promise kind of stuff, right? No complicated nonsense deals of like, I'll give you a loan with interest or whatever, right? It's too much to deal with. But this game just says, you can make basically any deal with anybody, go wild. There's no time limit. You can make deals with other people and it's like not their turn.
You can make alliances that are supported by the game where you're literally like, if the three of us win, we all win together, F you.
I think the specific rule in this game is like when the worm appears, every basic alliance is effectively broken and everyone can freely discuss and form alliances anew with whoever they want, and you can just spend as much time as it takes to agree upon whatever they're going to be.
If you play Settlers and it takes too long because people spend forever trading, you're doing that to yourselves. Like the game's not doing that to you. But put a little bit about the game there, because some games, like Elysium, trading in what's the name of that freaking game? Sidereal Confluence, trading and negotiation in the Elysian Quadrant.
That's the game. Just call it Sidereal Confluence.
That game looks like you took a bunch of cubes of like 5 different colors and just dumped them on the table. But the game does something really clever. It has these charts that all players have access to that tell you broadly the relative values of all the different kinds of things you could trade in relation to each other and to victory points.
Yeah, it's like, hey, by the way, you've never played this game before, but just so you know, a purple cube is worth about 2 yellow cubes most of the time. A green cube is worth about 1 purple, right? And it just sort of gives you a rough estimate of what the cube colors are worth, because all you're doing in the game is trading cubes. So it's like if somebody knew what cubes were worth and another person didn't, that would be really unfair, because you'd rip people off. You'd be like, hey, I'll trade you 1 yellow yellow for like 10 greens. Yeah, yellows are worth a lot, trust me. The little helper card goes a long way. It makes deals go way faster because you try to make a deal with someone. They just look at the card and they go, no, you're obviously ripping me off, or that seems right. Okay, I need that color.
Asymmetric games, and this is tricky. Asymmetric games like Root and Fast and Dune, they bring something really unique to the table. Like, it is cool to play a game like Vast, where you're all playing basically with completely different rules in the same board. But these games will often take forever, and I mostly blame all of you, because people who play these games don't actually learn all the rules. But at the same time, I understand. Are you gonna read? Do you all know how to play every faction in Root, despite the fact that you probably own them all? You know the ones that you play kind of often. These games, people are not going to put that investment in, but as a result, the games are going to take longer because people don't understand all the mechanics. But at the same time, the game is partly at fault because if the game is asymmetric, there is a multiplicative complexity problem where the game will just have an extreme amount of bushiness and not all players will be able to internalize all of that, and the game is just naturally going to take a long time. If you can design a highly asymmetric game that also moves very quickly, Root is a pretty good example of that, you're a genius.
Or you could just make it a little bit asymmetrical, right? Instead of going completely wild.
So Go, chess, these kinds of games, just like football, time is a resource. There's a reason there's the chess clock. They're not just testing, can you sit there like a monk for 1,000 hours and make the perfect move? They are testing, can you make moves reasonably? You both have 4 hours, let's go. I highly encourage you to try using chess clocks in other games, because now you're making time part of the game. You're playing a different game as a result, but Go without a clock is a different game because now you're testing something different than if there's a clock.
You can also play what's the blitz chess or whatever, where they make you go fast.
Oh, I love blitz chess.
Whatever, is that what it's called, or is it called something? I don't know. There's fast chess where they make you take your turn quickly.
Yep.
I think if someone's good at that, I think they're better at chess than someone who's better at the normal chess, personally.
So we spent the first third of this panel making fun of games that take a long time.
More like 2/3.
We spent the second third of this panel talking about why games take a long time. Now we're going to tell you how to go fast.
And how to make your friends go fast.
Yep. If you do these things, not only will you go faster, but you actually will win games a lot more, because a lot of this advice is also good advice for winning. First off, go find a game called Yahtzee. If you've never heard of it, go Google it and play it a lot. Like, play it. Play it until you play it perfectly. And if that sounds crazy, it is perfectly possible for a human who is not that good at math to play Yahtzee absolutely perfectly.
As perfectly as you could. There's still a lot of luck,
Yeah.
obviously. It's a dice game. You can't just force Yahtzees unless you're cheating.
In that you are making the best decisions you could make given the information you saw. Because if you get really good at Yahtzee, like the actions you take in Yahtzee of roll 5, decide which ones to keep, roll again, like that mechanic, that's all gonna turn into a blob in your brain that's just Yahtzee. And whenever you encounter another game and you recognize that part of that game is just a Yahtzee, you don't even have to think about it. You know exactly what to do with that part of the game, so you can focus on all the other parts. Right. You've got one part optimized.
And the same goes, it's not just Yahtzee. There are lots of smaller games that reappear in other games, right? Draft. Right? You play Sushi Go or Seven Wonders or draft magic cards with your friends, right? Take a hand, pick one, pass it around. That mechanic appears in so many other games, drafting. So just get good at draft as if it was a game somehow, or just play a really simple drafting game like Sushi Go and get super good at it. And now anytime you play another game and drafting is part of that game, you're gonna be really fast at it because it's like, oh, I'm already a master of Sushi Go. Bam, it's the same thing.
You really gotta recognize when a decision is arbitrary. I took out a bunch of slides. We have this whole exercise we used to do with like Neuroschema Hex, but it takes a while. But basically, when you look at games, a lot of games have symmetries in them to where two different options that look like two different options are in fact the exact same option in the game. And this is something humans are pretty good at. So whenever you're playing a game, try to notice when a decision doesn't matter, when a decision is meaningless. And when you'll know you've done this, when you realize this and your friends don't. When you see your friend thinking about something that you realized is actually just busy work because it doesn't matter.
Right. Think about, well, we're talking about chess, right? A chessboard is not symmetrical because the king and the queen are not the same. So it's like your decision at the start of the game of like, let's say you wanted to start with your knight, just choosing the right knight or the left knight is actually a different choice, right? But let's pretend there was some different chess where you had like two kings in the middle, so the board was symmetrical. Right down the middle, it's the same on both sides. It's weird chess, don't worry about the rules. Does it matter if you start with the left knight or the right knight? No. So if you're sitting there you've already decided you're going to start with a knight and they're both the same, don't sit there and waste your time thinking, should I go left or the right one? They're the same one because it's a symmetrical board.
So the best way to do this, because this is hard to engage with if you're not used to this kind of thing. If you're playing a game and you cannot tell the difference between two options, treat it like it's arbitrary. Either you're right or you're about to find out why you're wrong. You're gonna learn something either way. That is how I approach games. If I cannot tell the difference between two options, I literally pick one randomly because thinking harder is not gonna change that.
Don't we have slides about that specifically?
We do. And what these are, we're gonna talk now about heuristics. I love this image because it's something called the gaze heuristic. If I take this and just huck it out at one of you, you'll probably be able to catch it. But I
Or
bet,
come close.
Yeah, it might hit you, you might dodge it, but
If you're prepared for it, it increases your odds quite a bit.
But humans can't do quadratic equations in their heads that fast.
Right. Nobody in the world, when you throw an object at them, is going to like see the trajectory of it, know how many newtons of force he put into his throw and the angle and calculate where it's going to land. And in the time it takes to get through the air, move to the right position and be like, it's going to land here. I've got it. No one catches that way.
In fact,
you catch without even conscious thought.
So if I throw something at you, you won't be able to tell who I threw it to until it gets nearly there. But if I throw it at you, you will see where it's going because we do something called the gaze heuristic. We naturally will lock our necks at an angle where we're looking at the objects because most objects in the air that aren't a bird have a ballistic trajectory. If we then just move forward and backward and keep that angle the same, we will naturally draw the object right down to ourselves. It's not perfect. If the object doesn't have a ballistic trajectory, if there's a little rocket motor in that baseball, now you're in deep shit.
If it's got a weird throw like a knuckleball or something, it ain't gonna work.
If there's a ton of wind, it's not gonna work. Actually, it will work up to a point.
Right.
But the point is, this heuristic is not perfect. It is not the actual quadratic equations of acceleration. It's not physics, but it's close enough 99% of the time. Heuristics are how human brains interact with the world. We don't see the world. We see a vision of the world that our brain puts together and we interact on that. So everything's filtered.
So when you're playing a game and you have to make a decision, don't waste your time coming up with the 100% perfect, exact, correct decision that you calculated with a calculator. Use some heuristic to just get close enough quickly, right? It's like, I can get why would I spend 5 minutes to get a 100% perfect answer when I can get a 99% perfect answer in 2 seconds? Don't spend the extra 4 minutes, 58 seconds. Just do the 2-second one.
There are broadly two kinds of heuristics. Positional heuristics, not as relevant for this talk, but they are looking at the state of the game, determining who is winning. And that might seem simple, but what's this image here? Who's winning Mario Kart? The person in first place or the person in second place? Or the person in third place if the first two are really close and the blue shell's coming. The heuristics of who is winning a game can be pretty complex. Someone might have a bunch of points in Settlers of Catan, but someone else is 1 card away from longest road and 1 card away from largest army. Who's really winning? Thinking about that in your head, that's a heuristic. You look at the board and you have this sense of who's winning. You're not calculating the full state of the game, you're doing a simple calculation.
Good job. All right.
The more relevant one.
Directional heuristic is I need to make a decision in this game. Do I take the very stable, safe-looking bridge or the rickety bridge with snakes on the entrance? All right, you need some sort of way to make this decision quickly. Right? If you made the decision carefully, it's like, well, I would send a probe down each bridge to see what's on the other end, and I would check for traps. We don't got time for that, right? We're gonna come up with something simple like, I always take the thing that, I know that this game was made by someone who loves trickery. I'm always gonna take the thing that looks more dangerous because they're trying to fool me. Or, obviously this one on the left is more stable. Go that way all the time. Those snakes are gonna bite me. I'm scared of snakes.
A great example is in trick-taking games. I don't know if any of you are from Michigan, play a game called Euchre. That is a delightful t-shirt. For reasons I don't want to explain, the game of euchre is a trick-taking game, and the way the trump is determined, the trump in the card game, not the bad kind, is someone is going to pick up, there's a card sitting there face up, and one of the players, everyone goes around, everyone has an option to pick that card up and put it in their hand, meaning they've got one of the powerful cards in the game. Whatever they picked up becomes trump, and they've got one of them. For reasons I don't want to get into, the jacks are the most powerful cards in this game.
The bowers. They
The
like
bowers.
to bow.
So
They bow to the king.
If hearts are trump, then the jack of hearts is the most powerful, and the jack of diamonds is the second most powerful. Anyway, euchre, weird Michigan game. A heuristic is I never pass on a bower. If I'm playing euchre, and I've played a lot of euchre in my life, if I see a bower there, I pick it up no matter what.
Right. Now, is that always the right decision? No, there's weird hands that can happen in euchre where picking up the bower is actually going to make you lose. But it's really rare. So it's like to not waste everyone's time and think, is this one of those really rare cases where the bower's a bad idea? No, don't do that. If you see the bower, just pick it up, get on with life. No one will remember who won the game of euchre, and you're probably going to win if you pick up the bower anyway. It'll be fine.
These can get really complex. We don't have time to get into it, obviously, but in the game of Risk, which is a very random game, there is a Business Insider article from a while ago that shows a chart that basically tells you the real odds of whether or not you'll win a fight if you're the attacker. And if you follow this chart, there is a line of optimal play where you're very likely guaranteed to win. If you're above that line, keep attacking until you're below the line and then stop. If you do this, and you do it reliably in a game of Risk, you're not guaranteed to win because the game's random, but you're gonna win a lot more often than anyone who doesn't do this. Find this article, look it up. It's a pretty simple heuristic. I did learn how to do it, and I didn't win that game of Risk, but I got real close.
Right. So if you just practice this a little bit or remember, actually doing the decisions is less complicated than the chart looks, right? But just memorize the simple heuristic, practice it a little bit, and then your games of Risk will be faster because you won't agonize over should I attack or should I not. You'll say, oh, it's 5 against 1, that's above on the chart, I attack. It's 4 against 1, I keep attacking. 3 against 1, I stop.
Now, you'll develop more complex heuristics over time. I'll explain to you right now the simple version of the heuristic that you can use really easily. Generally, the more pieces there are, regardless of how much your advantage is as the attacker over the defender, more pieces gives the attacker advantage. So if you have a big army, always attack. If you have a small army, don't attack. This is a Wikipedia page. The idea of fast and frugal heuristics. Heuristics are used in sports, they're used in militaries, they're used in sociology and psychology. Heuristics are a very, very deep field of study, and there is a concept of fast and frugal heuristics. These are things you can do to make decisions generally. These are also things, for example, if you're an ice hockey player in the NHL, how much calculation are you doing about where to pass the puck versus just hockey is happening in your head and you just feel like time to pass? So
just to quickly go over these gaze heuristic, we talked about that one already. Take the first, which is like you can't decide, just take the first one that comes to mind or the first one you see. Don't waste time looking at the other ones, right? Recognition, maybe there's 3 options and one of those is an option that you know about. You know how it works, right? Just go for that one. The other 2 are weird. Are they better? Maybe they could be, but you've never seen them before. You don't understand them. You probably won't be able to use them properly because you don't know about them. There's one you know about. You're good at that one. You understand it. You'll be more effective with it. Just go with it for now. Study the other ones in your off time, right?
Yep.
Take the best. That's like the bower. It's obviously the best one, right? And then hot hand. It's like, oh, well, this has been working for me before, right? I'm going to keep going with what was working. I'm not going to try any weird other stuff.
So here's some examples of specific heuristics. Has anyone played a game called Citadels? Really fun game. Oh, wow. So this game, broadly, you got little cards like the thief and the bishop and the assassin and the king. And it's like the poison in the cup game from Princess Bride. You look at the cards, you pick one, that's your roll. You shuffle the cards and hand to the next person.
If someone knows which card you picked, you're in trouble, basically, right? You're trying to pick a card and hope that no one else knows which one you picked.
So if I pick the bishop, I score bishop victory points. If I pick the assassin, I name a roll to assassinate and they don't get to take their turn. So if Scott takes the assassin, names the bishop, I took the bishop, I lose my turn, etc. There's a lot going on in this game. Scott ruined this game. We can't play it anymore. And Scott ruined it in 2 ways. First, it wasn't cheating. He picked his card, and then he handed the cards to me, but he left them in a specific order. And watch, as I fanned the cards out, very clearly took a specific card, and then handed the cards to the left. But then he did something much more clever. He shuffled the cards and picked one randomly.
Right, you shuffle the cards on your turn because you don't want anyone to be able to do the trick I did first, but it's like, yeah, I'll just shuffle them and I'll pick one without looking. Here you go, right? It's like, now you don't know which one I picked. You can't figure out, oh, did he take the cup with the poison or not? It's like, I don't know either. You can't get, if I had 3 cards and one of them says rock, one says paper, and one says scissors, and I just shuffle the 3 cards and pick one and give you the same 3 cards, and it's like, you don't know if I picked rock, paper, or scissors. You can't do any psychology on that. It's tough shit.
So fast forward a couple more rounds. Everyone shuffles them every round. The game is just random. We've never played this game again. People who are good at games will hate you if you do this. Now, we say to the left because most games kind of take these turns clockwise. Like,
right. If it's a game that goes counterclockwise, do what the player to your right is doing. But basically, if the player to my left, let's say Rim's doing wood.
Yep, right? I'm doing the wood strategy in the game.
But I go before Rim. Right? I'm on the right side. He's on the left side.
Yep.
It's going clockwise. So on my turn, I take wood. And Rim goes, he's doing the wood strategy.
You took all the wood.
That's right. I'm go before you. I did the wood. Now you're in trouble. Now I'm going to win the game. Unless you have to switch strategies now and you wasted your time starting on the wood road.
Pick another player who you think is better than you at the game, and do whatever the hell is that they're doing. Because if you just do that, you might guarantee yourself second place if they really are the best player. Not bad. But if you do it this way, you might actually beat them because you'll be able to do it better than them, and all you have to do is just mimic broadly what they were doing. This is also a great way to learn the game by mimicking another player. Some of you don't want to do this, and you really gotta. If you are serious about games and you want them to go fast, actually learn the full rules to the games you want to play.
So much of the time that is spent waiting is people looking up rules, arguing rules, questioning the rules. Is this okay, right? And sometimes it's the game's fault because the game has poorly written rules or ambiguous rules. Don't play those games.
Looking at you, Hansa Teutonica, I love you, but those rules are atrocious.
Right, but if the rules of the game are good and there's nothing wrong with the game itself, don't waste time with rules nonsense. Make sure that everyone who's playing the game is a rules expert on the game beforehand. And if you aren't willing to put in the effort to do that, maybe you don't want to play the game that badly, so why am I going to play with you? If you're not taking it that seriously, go do something else. Go play Munchkin.
If you've never experienced this, I don't like the sublime feeling of sitting down with a table of 5 people who all know how to play a game and you just set it up without saying a word and immediately start playing. That is like my favorite thing on earth.
And everyone's an expert and you don't got to teach anyone and everyone's going to play really hard. It's going to be a more interesting game. There isn't going to be like some noob to beat up on. Right? Okay.
So let's say you have done this, but you have a friend you want to indoctrinate into the game. That's your game. You want them to have a good time. Then you should be their facilitator. Teach them the game while you play. Play the game like we did. A friend of ours got us into those crazy train games like 1846, Race for the Midwest, by playing them with us and instead of just crushing us, making interesting things happen to teach us how to play the games.
They also did all the busy work over there by themselves, so we didn't have to understand it or waste time with it. We could fully focus on learning the game and not how do we deal out the money, how do we do this other nonsense.
I'd buy a stock certificate and she would like hand me all the pieces that explain what the hell a stock certificate is and calculate the dividends, and I didn't really understand any of that, so I could focus on, I got a train company.
If someone does this for you, thank them graciously because they don't have to do that, but they are helping the game go faster. And if you want to be a wonderful person, you can do this too.
You think dungeon masters are underrated? The people who do this are the unsung heroes of tabletop.
Okay.
So
this is the obvious one.
I'd say Goofus and Gallant here, but actually it's just 2 gallants. So notice, this gentleman in red is taking his turn. This gentleman, instead of looking at his phone, is looking at the board and thinking about what he's gonna do. When you're at McDonald's, you don't wait to decide what you're gonna buy until you're right up at the counter. You decide it in advance. Don't do that in games. Also, our friend Scott, who is here at this convention, looks a lot like the Two of Humans in Wizard.
Okay.
So I know a lot of you, this is a thing. You get those Kickstarter board games, you play it 0.5 times, and you put it away, you never play it again. Or you get the new hotness, you play it once, maybe you play it one more time, and then you put it away. Honestly, you will have more fun and play faster if you play a game a lot. One, you're gonna figure out the boundaries of that game. You'll start to transcend some games. A lot of games, you might play once or twice and think they're fun. Play them 3 more times, you'll solve them. and you'll walk away and you'll be done. And if you ever see someone else playing them, you can walk by with grace and point out at people the perfect strategies. If you play a game a lot, you will get faster at it, and you will also learn depth. Think about someone who knows chess. They've gone very deep into one game, as opposed to playing a bunch of other chess-like clones they bought on Kickstarter once each.
It's pretty basic. There's a thing called practice. When you practice a thing, you get better at it. That's how humans work. So practice one game, you get better at it, you get faster at it.
And looking at you Magic players, play more games, more kinds of games. The more kinds of games you play, the faster you will get at all games. If you're stuck and you don't know what to do, seriously, just take your turn. Just give up, who cares? Take whatever random action and see what happens.
Right? Because if you play the game faster and you finish it, guess what? You'll learn the lessons from whatever you randomly chose, and you'll have time to play again. You'll get to play a second time, and you'll be right. You can make a better decision the second time.
If your friends are not taking their turn and are going too slow, we advise that you hit them.
It'll work. Right? I mean, it's either going to work and they'll take their turn because they don't want to get hit, or they won't play with you, in which case also mission accomplished. The slow people won't play with you.
We have definitely caused some people to never want to play games with us again, and it was best for everybody.
We can't tell the story where this came from, but keep going.
Yep. Or more likely, banish them from your game group. Like, I will play games with people who are slow at games, occasionally. But I have a different group of people I play games fast with. Banish the slow people from your pro set and play fast games with those fast people. And most importantly, play another game. Monopoly, terrible, all the things we talked about. There's a game called Fast Food Franchise. Super out of print, super hard to get. If you find a copy of this, buy it.
I'll buy it from you.
Yeah. This game is real fast. It's just Monopoly. It's Monopoly, but it ends. You play Monopoly, you get all the brain feel and all the fun of what Monopoly can have, and then it suddenly and catastrophically ends, and you're done and you're free. Just like this panel. I hope you enjoyed yourselves.
Okay. If you want